This is the Real Wealth Podcast, where we explore all things wealth related. Join us on this wealth journey. Let's get into it. In this episode, I'm speaking to Lyndsay Yuill, co-owner and director of Rent Locally, one of the fastest growing property letting agencies in Scotland. Lyndsay is also the face of the Property Investment Network in Edinburgh, and she is a general property expert. And I think we get straight into it, Lyndsay. First question I have for you is property investment, buy-to-let property investment, is it dead?
No, it's not dead.
Oh, that was a quick answer. That's easy, we can all go on with our life now.
No, it's not dead. I would say at the moment the rents are the highest they've ever been. There's little stock available, which means everything's flying off the shelves. There's really high demand. I think it's a great time to be buying because there's so many tenants that desperately need property. So I would say it's absolutely not dead. That's
relief to know, given that's our business. I think, a lot of people are talking about it in the context of, particularly in the UK or Scotland more specifically, you've got eviction bans, you've got, massive rent arrears in a lot of instances, you've got increased stamp duty and taxes on acquisition, you've got Section 24 that came in, a good few years back, but it's all leading to this really anti-landlord rhetoric from the government, and I think that's putting a lot of people off. So what are your views on that?
I think that more than any other time, we probably need to be focusing on protecting ourselves a bit more, spending a bit more time doing our numbers, really probably speaking to a lot more professionals before you just jump in and jump the gun and buy something. Property is one of those investments that you can protect every single part of. So you can, insure the building, insure the contents, but you can also insure the rent. So it is one of those investments where people say, safe as houses, and that's genuinely what they mean. If you put your money in the stock market, it's not insured, it's, win or lose. But with property, if you spend the time with the appropriate professionals, analysing a deal, making sure the numbers work, making sure that you've still got a buffer in place for compliance, and stress testing the mortgages to make sure that you do have a little bit of leeway should the mortgage interest rates go up again, then I think that's the best way that you can possibly go about protecting yourself.
Do you think interest rates are going to go up again?
The majority of people I've spoken to are suggesting that they're going to come down. They might go up one more time, but they are certainly suggesting by the middle of the year that they would start to see them coming down again.
Yeah. I mean, we've spoke a little bit about this in our business that, the fact is with inflation so high, they use this interest rate increase as a mechanism to control inflation. But for a lot of people, because of this situation in the economy, they're reluctant to do anything with their money. But that can be one of the most dangerous strategies just now when inflation is officially 10%, probably a lot more. Your money is losing value every single day, right?
Yeah. I think that's the thing, when a market is inflating like it is, cash in the bank is going down in terms of value. So you're probably better to invest it if you can. But whether the strategy of property is right for you or not will very much depend on your individual circumstances. So as I said, I would spend some time going through your own personal circumstances with the professionals that are around you and let them guide you and help you to buy the most appropriate properties for yourself.
Who are the best people to speak to when you're looking at getting a property in terms of the specialists?
Obviously, you've got property sourcers and things that will, bring deals to you. Estate agents will be able to tell you what the market value is before you buy a property and after you buy a property if you want to add value to it. Letting agents will be able to give you an idea of what the rent should be, what the ongoing achievable rent would be in an inflated and a deflated market. And also mortgage advisors would be good to tap into, try and get some information on what the current mortgage rates are, and they will be able to help you stress test up and down the way whether or not a deal's going to stack up if interest rates go up another % or two, or if they come down a % or two. Contractors that do refurbs will be able to give an idea on what prices would be charged for certain works that maybe would need to be done prior to letting. So that all needs to be built into your equation as well. And then perhaps a tax advisor might be able to tell you if you're eligible for stamp duty discounts and things like that if you're buying 6 or more properties, for example.
And I think it's really, really good advice that, you know, getting started in anything, and Laurie said this when we done the podcast together with him, and, you know, he said, getting educated first, no matter what wealth strategy you're going on, whether it's property, whether it's stock shares, ISAs, whether it's crypto, whatever you're going to do, it's getting that advice from the relevant people. So many people take advice from, you know, their immediate circle of friends. Oh, my pal had a buy-to-let property and it was a disaster and the tenant wrecked the place and blah, blah, blah. You're not getting the relevant advice from someone who really knows that strategy inside out, right?
What I would also say is what you probably want to do is tap into experts in each individual area, because one size of advice doesn't fit all. Yeah. So, for example, the advice we would give somebody investing in the centre of Edinburgh could be completely different to the advice that we would give somebody investing in Glasgow or even, you know, West Lothian, Falkirk, areas like that. So the strategy would maybe be different depending on the area that you're trading in, and therefore you maybe are better to speak to local people on the ground rather than having one person that's advising on everything across the board.
Absolutely, getting that specific tailored advice from the right people, hugely important. So let's talk a little bit about your background and you as an entrepreneur, as an investor. To me, you're one of the hardest working people that we deal with, because you just always seem to be on top of things and moving things forward, irrespective of the time, the place. Even when you're in soft play, you know, taking calls, you know, you just seem to be balancing a lot. I know you started your kind of business journey quite early. You started your own business at 22. So tell us a bit about your background and what led you into ultimately what you're doing now.
So originally I had a care background and I worked in the care sector, fell into property by accident. So I set up a Livingston branch for a Glasgow company, and I ran them for about a year, and then I set up my own business. So I set up in 2008. In 2012 I did a merger with Rent Locally.
What a time to start up in property in 2008 during the crash.
It was a very educational time. Learned a lot from just watching landlords, how they dealt with the crash. I watched a lot of the economic cycle. So while some landlords came out of the market, people whose pensions weren't performing came into the market and started cash buying stuff. Obviously the situation in 2008 was a lot tougher than now because the banks didn't have money. So the criteria of what they were lending changed, and they made it really quite tough for landlords to survive. But there was a lot of landlords that really rose to the challenge and stripped back cost and increased profitability and sailed right through. So for me, that was a time where I learned a lot about business strategy and how to debt manage and things like that, just by watching some of my really entrepreneurial clients survive that time. In 2012, I did a merger with Rent Locally, and basically both companies came together, and that's when we started franchising and developing business partnerships.
How many branches does Rent Locally have now?
The main areas that we've got branches is Edinburgh, West Lothian, Glasgow, Dundee, Perthshire, and then Oban and Fort William is the kind of main kind of areas that we've got branches. So
you cover a decent chunk of the main Scottish market there, at least. So I guess the first most obvious question from all of that for me is, what led you to start your own business at a fairly young age rather than just get a job or go into employment? Because, you know, that's the journey for most people, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've always been quite driven. I think when I set up the Livingston branch for the Glasgow-based company, I learned quite a lot in quite a short space of time. And because I was the main manager of that branch, I think I probably realised it wasn't as hard as you would maybe think it would be to set up your own business. So that was the angle I decided to go down.
What were the things that you had to learn, the skills that you had to learn through setting up your own business, for anybody that's thinking about maybe starting out? I
would say a lot of what I learned was relying on other people as well. So, I went to Business Gateway. I did a couple of their courses on bookkeeping and like various different things. I spoke a lot to Scottish Association of Landlords, got loads of advice from them. And then any kind of issue that we faced, I just would seek help from the appropriate professional to kind of overcome it. So anyone that's looking to set up their own business, I would say go for it. Surround yourself by people that will help you. Business Gateway do loads of free courses to kind of help you get on that ladder, or even to think about what you need to put in place to get on the ladder to start the journey. So no time like now.
And it's very similar in a sense to the advice that you give to anybody starting out in property, anybody starting out in business, is just surround yourself by the right people. And that can be challenging for some people in certain environments. It certainly was for us growing up, because we just didn't have any entrepreneurs around us, nobody that were building their own business, so it wasn't something that was readily available to us. But now, with the wealth of knowledge that's available on the internet, if you've got an internet connection, you've got access to millions of information, thousands of podcasts, and access to all these different organisations that can help you in your journey. So it's just about understanding where to go and trying to surround yourself with as many people that can support you.
I spent quite a lot of time in the early days networking, just going to local events and trying to get as much knowledge as I could for as little money as possible, I guess, because you're surrounding yourself by a lot of business owners and people with a lot of knowledge who are all expert in their field, and I'm not necessarily an expert in their field. So to just be able to have a conversation once a month, with people that can just help and guide you, or just even point out to you things that maybe you wouldn't have considered, that would save you a lot of time just by having the knowledge to look for. So that definitely made a massive difference to me when I set up.
And I think that's something that you've taken forward now, right? For most people that follow property, they'll be aware of the Property Investment Network PIN.
Yeah.
And you recently took on the role as the hostess of the Edinburgh event, right?
Yeah. Just in January, we took over the hosting of it. I've been on the PIN team in Edinburgh for a year before that, but I took over the hosting role from Timer Malik, who was the host for 3 years prior. Got a really good team there. There's architects on the team, there's estate agents, mortgage brokers, property investors, obviously I'm a letting agent. So there's a whole wealth of knowledge of people that are there to kind of help guide, as well as the professionals in the room, a lot of whom are business owners. So property investors by default tend to own their own businesses as well. So that there always seems to be somebody there that can answer the bulk of the questions that, that are hot topics at the moment. So
just surrounding yourself in the right network, and that must be massively advantageous to the people that are coming through. But I guess there's a business angle for you as well, gives you access to a bunch of landlords and potential clients for your business moving forward, right?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I think there's a lot of kind of panic in the market. And I think sometimes coming to these events, it allows you to see the calm in the storm. When the 4% stamp duty came out, everybody panicked. But, it didn't kill buy-to-let investment. It just changed it. It's the same now, the 6% stamp duty's out, for the ADS. It's not going to kill it. It's just going to change the way that we have to work our numbers.
Yeah, and that's it. There are a lot of challenges, as we say. The kind of rhetoric with the government, particularly in Scotland, has been sort of anti-landlord. There's a lot of legislation that's came in that's made the tax environment more difficult. But again, as you said before, there are solutions to deal with this if you set up and structure yourself in the right way and get the right information at the start. ADS, additional dwelling supplement, has been a big challenge for landlords. Any time that you're buying a second property or an investment property, whether it's company or individual, you need to pay this extra tax. It started off at 3%, it's still 3% in England. Scotland quickly increased it to 4% and more recently increased it to 6%. So, that's 6% straight tax you're paying if a property is worth more than 40k. We deal with a lot of kind of lower end properties that we're going to improve and increase the value in. So we do try occasionally, believe it or not, in Scotland you can still do it, of finding properties below 40k that you can add value in, and usually refinance about 65-70k. So it's a big challenge for landlords. It has been for a while, but like you say, if you're surrounded by the right people and the right networks, then you can find solutions to deal with all of this stuff. So obviously you have Rent Locally, this business, you have business partners in it, the business has been growing well, successfully. What are your plans for the future, both with Rent Locally and personally with your own kind of wealth journey?
Just growth. So at the moment, my friend locally, we are in the process of buying a small company, another letting agency. We're looking at another one potentially locally as well. So we're looking to kind of grow through normal landlord acquisition, but also through, different strategies like purchasing small companies and things like that as well. On a personal level, I want to continue to buy to let, buy to flip, and so on. So just a multi-pronged strategy across the board. I think the market, it's not as bad, in my opinion, as some people are making it out to be. And personally, it's not going to stop me still working in property or still wanting to invest in property.
So your wealth creation strategy is very heavily focused around property because you know it, you love it, you understand it, you live it every day.
Yeah.
Is there any other strategies that you've looked at, or you're very much focused on property because that's where you...
I would say largely focused on property, purely because, everybody needs a property at the end of the day. So it's a market that's not, that there's always going to be a demand for. I prefer that to most other strategies, if I'm being honest with you.
Mm. Yeah, fair enough. No, I get that, and we are kind of at that stage in our journey just now as well, where we've got so much going on with property, and albeit our business is growing into different areas, but still with a property focus, like the training, even the building company is kind of more focused on refurbs for a buy-to-let business. So, it's all within the same sphere, but it works quite synergistically together, and that's it if you try and do too many different strategies. And we've found that from people who have come to train with us, if they're also thinking about doing a bit of crypto and also thinking about doing a bit of investment, if you don't give it the time and focus, then you're just not going to get the results and you're not going to get the benefit from it. So I think that's a real truth that people kind of need to understand. So I think one of the things that I also wanted to cover was, what kind of benefits to you do you have in this whole entrepreneurship, the fact that you run your own business? How does that affect your life? Is it something that you're glad you went down that route because employee, I think, is very restricted potentially, and what about your own journey through that and how it's affected your life and kind of the bigger benefits of having your own business?
I liked having my own business because initially I liked being able to control my own diary and I suppose not really having to answer to anyone. Doing the merger with the boys meant that obviously I then had to consider business partners and other people's viewpoints and things like that. So, but I suppose having your own business allows you to have the freedom to do whatever you want or to take it in whatever direction you want. So, the choices that we've made to go down the franchising route or, any other kind of growth strategies that we've done has very much been as a result of our want to do it and not a mandatory you have to do it.
Yeah.
Which is attractive. We're quite competitive, so we like to do well at what we do.
Yeah.
So we do give 100% to anything that we do. But obviously having children as well, it allows us to have the time to spend time with them and take some time off during the week to do stuff with them if that's exactly what we want to do. So it does allow you to have the work-life balance you choose to have.
Yeah, and work-life balance is so huge. When I talk about my own wealth journey and really what real wealth means to me, I'm always thinking about this balance of life, of being able to spend enough time at home and have those experiences and not be, fully committed and fully focused on a job. But it has its own downsides because sometimes in business you get overly focused on what you're doing and it's not always easy to pull yourself back. Laurie and I's first kind of view of what property was going to bring us was this passive income where we could be on the golf course every day and not really have to work, and then we started all these different trading businesses off the back of property, and before you know it you're back in a full-time job but loving it. I think is the key difference.
I think it's a definite skill set to grow a business from scratch, but then staff it up appropriately and train the staff appropriately to run it for you effectively. A lot of our staff have been with us for a good number of years, and they're very, very strong at what they do. So, we know if we give them a task, it's done. But it has taken a long time to get, a really good team and a really good set of people in every single place, because obviously, as you know yourself, when you start up, you've got to kind of grow it to a certain level before you can even have staff.
Yeah.
So it does take a lot of discipline and mindset to kind of trade at different levels and different stages of your business as well. You know, from you doing all the jobs to being able to delegate and give up a bit of the control.
Being willing to delegate, you know, it's that thing of letting go, which really isn't easy for a lot of people. It's the first step. But, you know, I remember the stepping into the fear of hiring our first employee and just worrying that you now had this other person to manage and make sure that you were getting the most of. And, you know, it's not only the significant cost that comes on with bringing someone, it's the trust that you put in them. It's making you get sure you get the most out of them, and ultimately going through the headache at the start of finding the right people and going through a few failures before you get to where you need to be.
I think also having the responsibility of, you know, protecting them as well in an environment, you know, that we've had a lot of challenges in the recent market with COVID and things like that, and, you know, just being able to change your business model and strategize through all the market changes that get thrown at you is, you know, that's a skill set in itself. So
it's a huge responsibility to be in charge of someone else's financial well-being. You know, they rely on a salary every month and it's your responsibility. It's fine when Laurie and I first started and, you know, we're running a bit late on a property deal because we're waiting cash to land. You can't do that when you've got someone to pay.
Exactly.
And that's a massive responsibility that comes along when you're running and trying to scale a business, you know.
Exactly.
So it's definitely one that you know that gets me every time. If anything keeps me up at night, it's worrying about staff and all that sort of stuff. But that's the joys of building a business.
Where surrounding yourself by the right people really does help, because, you know, we're not experts in everything at all. So you can take advice from people that have been there and done it before, and, you know, every day's a school day, as they say, for all of us. So
what do you think the biggest challenges are coming in the next 12 months in property investment?
I think obviously the rent freeze and non-eviction law has been challenging for some people, but to put it in perspective, when you put a rent up, it's normally capped for 12 months anyway. So, you know, we are only talking maybe a potential extra 6 months from an original kind of cap point. I think obviously there's tax changes happening, there's a lot of political changes happening which may or may not impact the market. So I think the best thing to do is to just try and position yourself ahead of the game. Often we're told about these law changes coming in early, not all the time obviously. The stamp duty one was, you know, a bit of a bombshell. That was, you know, no notice required. But
I think they have to do that with the stamp duty though, because it affects too many transactions. If it's like, right, we're announcing it, by the way, tomorrow it kicks in, off to the races, you know, because if you have too much foresight in these things, it can mess with the market a bit too much, right? Yeah,
exactly. Whereas the rent freeze and the winter eviction thing was, you know, in the white paper the year before. So, you know, there was a little bit of preempting to that if you were aware of what the legislations were and things like that. So I think the challenge is just going to be to keep your ship steady and just navigate through the storm. We've had a couple of clients in the last couple of weeks that were considering selling that we've now managed to kind of sit down, re-strategise with them what they want to achieve from their portfolio, and they've maybe refinanced appropriately and they're happy to kind of remain in the market. So I think sometimes people just need a little bit of guidance to help them decide if they want to stay in the industry or if they don't want to stay in the industry. And it's not for everyone. You know, some people will leave, but a lot of people will see this as an opportunity to buy more.
I think it's always really interesting when you look at the mass behaviours of a population, because, you know, I always go back to this thing from Warren Buffett where, you know, he says be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. So when something like this happens, when you're in an environment where there's a bit of chaos like there is in the property market just now, that creates massive opportunity. It's just about trying to figure out where the opportunity is and how to capitalise on it. You know, millionaires are made through property crashes. A lot of people lose through it as well, but if you're on the right side of it and you're approaching it from the right angle, then it's a phenomenal opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think the main thing in a market like this is not to panic and not to make any knee-jerk reactions. When there's a lot of law changes and there's a lot of unrest and a lot of unhappiness in the marketplace, it sometimes encourages people to jump down a route that they would never normally have jumped down, and maybe just taking the step back and really kind of thinking through different options on how to navigate your own portfolio through what's happening just now with interest rate increases and so on, is probably the best advice that anyone could give at the moment.
What do you think the biggest opportunity is then, just now in property?
Well, I think there's a lot of property going for sale at the moment. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity for people to acquire property. There's lots of stuff that are going on that value can be added to. So yeah, I think if you just keep your eye on the market and keep looking, there's good deals to be had.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a loaded question for me because obviously a big part of our business is sourcing below market value property deals. Yeah. And, we have seen exponential growth on leads for that business over the course of the last couple of months. Really since January, we came back from holidays, a couple of weeks off over Christmas. And normally we'd see maybe 10 leads a month, decent leads. We'd had somewhere in the region of 50 over that period that we were off, and that has just grown substantially over the last few months. Connor and his team are doing somewhere in the region of 10 to 15 below market value deals a month, and that's between stuff we're buying, stuff we're trading on to our training clients and all that sort of stuff. So for me, that's definitely where the opportunity is just now, and we might be lucky to see another opportunity like this for the next 10 years or so. Now, I don't know how long this is going to last, and I think that's my next question really for you, is whether or not you think a full-blown property market crash is coming in the UK.
I think what's happening at the moment is, obviously during COVID, there was so little stock on the market for various reasons. One, we were in lockdown, but also the land registry shut for a little while during lockdown before they set up a satellite office. So in an area of the market where there's very little stock, there tends to be very high demand, and that's where we've seen the prices going way over the odds in the last kind of couple of years since 2020. What has happened in the last 6 to 12 months is that the normal stock levels have started to resume. So there's been less competition, the prices are starting to stabilise a little bit. I've heard a lot of people saying house prices are going to drop a little bit, but they're dropping to normal home report level as what it was pre-COVID. So they're not necessarily dropping to a significant discount. I would say that what I'm seeing across the market is if it's an empty property, it's still going really, really quickly. Generally speaking, at home report level or potentially over. Tenanted properties are tending to stick a little bit since the stamp duty increased in December. And I think that's just working its way, that new bit of legislation is just working its way through the market at the moment. So there tends to be, obviously this time of year is a bit quieter anyway, but peak season for sales is April to October. So I think that the summer I'll see, we'll soon find out, I guess, what's happening in the market. But I think it's just stabilising and normal stocks resuming is really
I mean, we've seen that on the lending side as well, that the lenders freaked out a little bit to start with when interest rates started going up, and a few products were pulled. It was difficult to get answers from some of the lenders, and things are settling down now. Rates are starting to normalise a little bit, albeit they are higher. And hopefully that continues and we have a level of stability. I think our expectations, and I think what I've heard the common theme seems to be at the moment, is this expectation of really marginal flat growth for an extended period of time. I think that's the general outlook for the economy, is really flatlining growth for a while as we try and dig out of the effects of COVID, the effects of the cost of living crisis, the effects of Brexit, and the massive increase in costs of day-to-day items that's led to. So hopefully inflation gets under control pretty quickly, but whilst that's still ongoing, there's probably going to be a few freakouts along the way, but I would say over time.
I think it would be sensible as a strategy for a lot of people to consider consolidating and just stabilising the position that they're in, instead of aggressively growing if their base point isn't already stable. Like if you're going to drive traffic to a platform, you need to make sure that the platform's not going to fall over. So, it probably wouldn't do any harm for people to just spend a little bit of time kind of reassessing, am I on the right product? Should I be looking at a switch product for my mortgage, or, you know, do my numbers stack where I am at the moment? And is there any other ways that I could generate income from my portfolio or add value to my portfolio that, you know, would maybe make refinancing easier and things like that as well?
Yeah, good advice. So always end the podcast on the same question. So I'm going to ask you, what does real wealth mean to you and what you're trying to achieve in your life?
Real wealth to me is having a really good work-life balance. It's where you make money work for you and that your lifestyle is not affected by it, I feel like. So rather than the day job being the life that you're building as a result of the wealth is where I see real wealth being. So, you know, having the lifestyle and the time with your family and friends is more important than, you know, spending
mass amounts of money
8 hours a week working in your business. As a business owner, you do get pulled back into that from time to time. If there is a big issue in the market like COVID, for example, like your work-life balance goes off kilter for a little while, but, you know, the goal is to always get it back on the other side of the fence. So
absolutely stabilize and move forward. We've had similar journeys recently with our business and trying to, you know, restructure, calm things down a little bit, and then hopefully Laurie and I get a bit of time back through the chaos. But it's just run your own business.
Exactly.
Well, thanks a lot, Lyndsay. That's been
You're
great. Thanks a lot for coming along and good chat. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
This has been the Real Wealth Podcast. I'm Alex Robertson. Thanks for listening, and I hope you join us on this wealth journey.